Hey, it's Mazzy. We're going to talk about John Lennon Mind Games Record Store Day, the EPs. I'm going to give you a little background on Mind Games. In 1973 it came out, and talk about these two new EPs that I just received this morning from the UK, thanks to the Lennon estate. I love that portrait, that from Richard Avedon, 67. EP, this is a preview of this summer's release of the expanded Mind Game set. I don't know all the specific configurations of that yet, but if it's anything like what they did with Plastic Ono Band and Imagine, it's going to be really a wonderful thing. I think Sean Ono Lennon has been doing a great, consistent reissue program for his father's music. They are skipping over, at least for the time being. We'll see what happens. The third album, sometime in New York City. Now, not counting the avant-garde collaborations with Yoko that they did together, but those have been reissued already. But interesting, conspicuous in its absence, the most political album, the most controversial album, the least commercial, as I said, they did sometime in New York City. Maybe at some point they'll do a limited version for the freaks like us. But what's great about what Sean has been doing on those full box sets, they've been stripped down versions, outtakes, some of the demos they work on, and they've been doing these ultimate mixes, which they consider now the new final mix, at least the mix of 2024 into this time period, current times. And they do these elemental mixes. I assume that'll happen as well. And there's always usually a book. I know the book is already up for pre-sale. It's coming out in the fall as well. But I will talk about this, but let's go back to 1973. This, in a way, was a problematic record. The first Beatles solo album that came out when I first worked in a record store in 1973. Earlier this year, Living Material World came out prior to my job at a record store. And this month alone, this came out in the States the end of October in 1973, and then in the UK in November of 1973. And remember, like literally a couple weeks after this, the Ringo album came out, which was a massive, literally the biggest hit single-wise of all the Beatles. And of course, the end of November was Band on the Run. McCartney finally has something huge as well. And I remember first putting this on in this record store I worked at when it came out. And what I do have in here, which I slipped in, I just remembered I slipped this in. This was the promo slick that came out from Capitol Records in the US. There you go. The promo slick. Luckily, I stuck it in and saved it. But what I do remember about this, although I like the songs, the sound of this record was muddy. There was something off about it. Even in our big store stereo when I brought it home, I like most of the songs, but there was a muddiness to this album in 1973. Now, I did also pick up soon after the original Capitol. This is my original Capitol, a UK version. It sounds slightly better than the American version, but not by a lot, really. When it came out, it did have an inner sleeve with all the musicians on it. This is recorded at a sort of tumultuous time for Lennon. The FBI anti-political American thing was happening. And, Lennon was, he had raw nerves going on writing this record. But the songs are beautiful. I have this too, and this is really interesting. Capitol Records, I took all these from my record store days. Up to this time, I guess in late 1973, early 74, they put out these cards that sent out to record stores, which had all the albums up to that period. So you can see the last album up to this period was Mind Games. And the first promo record store promo shirt I ever got was for Mind Games. Insert photograph of Mazzy here, somewhere here, with my long, lovely locks as a young 19-year-old in a record store wearing a Mind Games t-shirt. So let's talk about this record and all the different incarnations of this record. The single that was put out by Capitol Records sported this picture sleeve. Same on both sides. Mind Games, this is the Capitol Records. And it had Meat City, the rocker on the B side. That's the Capitol single. Back in 1973, John Lennon did the cut and paste artwork himself, made this cover art with him and Yoko looking over the plane, closer and away from the camera. And it's lovely that 51 years later, Sean did a montage taking some of the images and Polaroids of John and Yoko and making an updated EP. It'd be interesting to see what he does with the full box set coming out this summer. Then there were CDs. The original CD came out like this in America. 2002, there was a remix. Now, let me talk about that because, as I said, I always thought the sound of this record is muddy. The original CD is as muddy, and there's no dynamics as the original record. But in 2002, the record was remixed by Alan Rouse, only for CD. As far as I know, this remix never came out on vinyl in 2002, obviously in the midst of the CD era. And this actually sounds best. In 2002, this was the best version I ever heard. And interesting enough, when they did issue box sets years later, they went back to the original mix. I personally was a little disappointed. So I'm totally looking forward to the ultimate mixes here, especially after hearing this. And then just to show you one other, I have the Japanese issue that came out in the last decade. One of the Japanese issues. I love these little issues with OBs, etc. Kind of a fun little collector's item. So now to these EPs. There are two coming out for Record Store Day on April 20th. There's a black vinyl version. It does have a hype sticker. I took it off already. I unwrapped it. The black version is your standard black. Look at that kind of beautiful label. And then there is, as designated in the hype sticker, a collector's glow-in-the-dark edition. Now, those of you who always mention that I don't want colored vinyl, I want black vinyl. Well, black is a color. The original color of vinyl is actually closer to this. Now, obviously with the glow-in-the-dark, whatever's added to it, I'm sure that changes things, but black is a color, just like colored vinyl. There you go there. So let's talk about the music and the sound. 4-track EP, opens up with Mind Games, the ultimate mix. Just like he did with Plastic Ono Band and with Imagine, the ultimate mix is sort of the new mix, the current mix for 2024. It's full, it's clear. Those of you that love John's voice, it's just so wonderful to hear the clarity in that voice. And after I put on my original UK and my original American, I couldn't believe how bad those originals sound, how thin they sound. There's no dynamics in it. They're sort of muffled. It makes the songs worse than they really are. There's some great music on this record, but for whatever reason, the sound of the record was so disappointed in 1973. And aside from the 2002 CD, it's been a terribly received album in terms of the sound. Some of the songs have gotten through to the masses, but this record didn't really do much. Although it did hit, probably John was sort of smiling up there when it came out. It hit number 9 on Billboard, of course, number 9. His lucky number. So it hit number 9 on Billboard. I think it did a little better in the UK initially, and then it fell to the side. And of course, the next year he would do Walls and Bridges, and then the rock and roll Phil Spector debacle kind of album too. So hopefully those will come out over the next couple of years. Then on track 2 is I Am the Greatest, the ultimate mix. Now, those of you who haven't heard John Lennon's version, you're in for a treat. It's been on bootlegs and some other releases over the years, but this is a great sounding version. Now, it is, in essence, the guide vocal version for Ringo. John really felt he couldn't sing it, so he gave it to Ringo, which was a great opening for that 1973 Ringo album. This version features George Harrison, Ringo Starr, and Klaus Voormann, so it's a wonderful minimal version, and it's a killer version of it. B1 side 2, Asumasen, that's I'm sorry in Japanese. That's an ultimate mix. The acoustic guitars on that, the vocals, it's so beautiful. And then the last track on side 2 is a long song, and it's outtake, take 5 of You Are Here. He got that name from the show that Yoko had, the art show at the Robert Fraser Gallery in London in the 1960s. And let me just insert this for a moment, just to kind of round out the story here. This is the new catalog for the retrospective show that's happening right now at the Tate Modern in London. It goes through, I believe, the first week of September. I'm looking forward to seeing that. Just happened to pick this up at City Lights Books in San Francisco on my trip last week. But this, to me, is the best thing on this record. Now, everything is good. Everything sounds great. This isn't second-rate extra stuff thrown out just to sell you on Record Store Day. This is actually a teaser. I assume maybe everything will be on this summer album, but there might be bonus here. I don't know that. But You Are Here is a really long version. It's such a beautiful version. And what's great about it, it's stripped down. It's John with the small band. I think it's David Spinoza on guitar. In fact, we should probably look back on who plays on this record for those of you who aren't familiar. We got Ken Asher on piano organ, Dave Spinoza on guitars, Gordon Edwards bass, Jim Keltner, of course, on drums, plus Rick Marotta on 2 tracks on drums, Michael Brecker on sax, Sneaky Pete pedal, and we have some background vocals on there. Of course, Dr. Winston O'Boogie, which is John Lennon. The version here is a stripped down version. I have always thought the background singers on that song on the original version on Mind Games is a little kind of cheesy here. This is killer. His voice, that's the John Lennon voice that makes you melt. You can feel that vocal on it. And it goes on and on. I don't know what the time is. Is there a time on it here? No, there's no time on it. It seems like it goes 6 minutes, 7 minutes even. I don't know. But it's such a beautiful version. I'm super looking forward to this album this summer. This is an excellent release, and it's a great that we're getting this teaser for Record Store Day. Thank you, Lennon Estate. Cool record, Mind Games, coming out. I hope it gets a reevaluation, because I think this album deserves a reevaluation. When it comes out this summer, I'll definitely do another video on it, because there's such great songs on here. Even you've been seeing these social media, the Utopian National Anthem, this imaginary world country that all the freedoms are there and no immigration is there. And I mean, it's very topical now what's happening in the world. Wonderful record, wonderful record. I'm looking forward to this, and this is a killer. This is a killer Record Store Day release. Thanks again, and put the comments in below. Mazzy loves you.